My parents called me the selfish one my entire life. But that all changed the day the bank manager pulled up the file showing exactly who had been paying their mortgage for the last 11 years. For as long as I can remember, I've been the black sheep of the Delaney family. My parents, Clara and Roy, never missed a chance to compare me to my younger sister, Mara. She was their responsible one, their pride, their perfect daughter. And me? I was the one who never tried hard enough, the one who was always thinking about herself. It didn't matter that I worked 2 jobs just to survive. It didn't matter that I barely slept some days, juggling early cafe shifts and late-night office cleaning. My parents still acted like I wasn't pulling my weight. They constantly hinted that a good daughter would help her family more. Meanwhile, Mara floated through life with the car they co-signed for her, the rent they paid, and the endless praise they showered on her. Even at 27, I was still treated like the problem child. So when I got a call from an unknown number one afternoon, I almost let it go to voicemail. I was exhausted and standing outside the cafe, trying to catch my breath before heading to my second job. But something pushed me to call back. A man introduced himself as Gregory Holt from Hamilton Community Bank. His tone was polite, but there was a seriousness under it that made my stomach tighten. He told me there was a signature discrepancy involving my parents' mortgage. I actually laughed at first. "There must be a mistake," I said. "I'm not on my parents' mortgage. I've never been." Gregory didn't argue. He simply told me he needed me to come in. There was sensitive information involved, something he couldn't discuss over the phone. I didn't want to go. I had so much to do, and honestly, I didn't want to get dragged into whatever mess my parents had going on. But the worry sat heavy on my chest, so after work, I drove to the bank. I walked in expecting nothing more than a simple mix-up, maybe a wrong name, an incorrect form, something that would take 5 minutes to clear up. But the moment I walked into Gregory's office, I knew this wasn't routine. He closed the door gently and asked me to sit. His expression was calm but cautious, like he was handling something fragile. "Before I show you this," he said quietly, turning his computer screen toward me, "I want you to know that you didn't do anything wrong." I frowned, confused and suddenly nervous. "What is this about?" He clicked a file, and the screen filled with numbers, dates, and my own name. Monthly payments. 11 years worth. All coming from an account under my identity. I felt the air leave my lungs as I leaned forward, staring at the screen. In that instant, everything I thought I knew about my family started to shatter. Gregory turned the computer screen toward me, and I saw a list of payments I didn't recognize. At first, I thought I was looking at someone else's file, but then I saw my own name at the top. He pointed to a line that showed a monthly auto payment going straight to my parents' mortgage. My heart started beating fast. I had never signed up for anything like that, and I knew for a fact I never had that kind of money. I kept shaking my head, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. "This can't be mine," I said quietly. But Gregory clicked another tab, and there was my information, my name, my social security number, and an electronic signature that was supposed to be mine. When he zoomed in, I felt sick. The signature looked like someone had tried to copy mine from years ago. It wasn't exact, but it was close enough to fool a system. Then Gregory told me something that made everything worse. The payments didn't start recently. They began 11 years ago. 11 years. I was 16 at the time. I barely even understood how bank accounts worked back then. There was no way I had opened anything like this. My hands went cold as the truth slowly hit me. Someone had used my identity. Someone who had access to my personal information. Someone who lived in my house. That thought made my stomach twist. I didn't want to believe it, but there was no other explanation. Whoever did it had my social security number, my birthday, everything. They had pretended to be me. Gregory could see how shaken I was. He spoke gently, telling me this counted as identity theft and that I needed to file a fraud report as soon as possible. He printed out a stack of statements showing every payment made under my name. When he handed them to me, it felt like he was placing the weight of my whole life into my hands. I kept staring at the papers, hoping something would jump out and prove there was another answer. But the more I looked, the clearer it became. Someone in my family had been using me for more than a decade, and I had never known. While I was working myself to exhaustion, struggling to survive, someone else was draining the future I didn't even get to build. When I finally stood up to leave, my legs felt weak. The room seemed bigger, colder, and somehow unfamiliar. I walked out of the bank feeling like my chest was empty. The air outside felt different too, sharp and heavy. I kept thinking about the last 11 years. Every argument, every time they called me selfish, every time they made me feel small. Now I understood something I never wanted to face. My family hadn't just mistreated me. They had stolen a part of my life. I drove straight to my parents' house with the bank papers still shaking in my hands. I didn't bother calling ahead. I walked through the front door, and both of them looked up from the living room like I was interrupting something unimportant. I didn't sit down. I didn't smile. I just held out the papers and said, "We need to talk." My mom, Clara, took one look at the documents and her face tightened. She didn't look confused. She didn't look surprised. She looked angry at me. "Why are you bringing this drama into the house?" she snapped, like I was accusing her of something petty. My dad, Roy, sighed loudly, shaking his head. "Harper, you always forget things. Maybe you agreed to help years ago and don't remember." He said it calmly, as if I was too careless to understand my own life. I felt heat rise in my chest. "I didn't forget anything," I said. "I never opened this account. I never paid for your mortgage. Someone did this behind my back." As I spoke, I noticed Mara sitting on the far edge of the room, almost hiding behind the arm of the couch. She wouldn't look at me. Her eyes stayed glued to the floor. The moment I saw her avoiding me, my stomach dropped. She knew something. I turned back to our parents. "Tell me the truth," I said. "Who used my name? Who did this?" For a moment, no one spoke. Then it started to spill out, not as an apology, but like they were annoyed I had finally found out. Clara rolled her eyes and said, "You were 16. You didn't need credit anyway. We used your social security number, so we could get a lower rate. It was for the family." My dad nodded like that made everything okay. "Mara needed a stable home," he added, as if saying her name explained everything. "You were too young to understand what we had to do." I stared at them, stunned. They talked about stealing my identity like it was a small favor I should be grateful for. "You acted like it was protecting us," my mom added sharply. "You're being dramatic." My voice shook. "You destroyed my credit. You ruined my chances at loans, apartments, jobs, everything. You let me struggle for years while you used my name. And here you go," Roy said, throwing his hands up, making a big deal out of nothing. "Always ungrateful. Always looking for someone to blame. Ungrateful." The word hit me harder than anything else. After everything I had done to survive on my own, after all the years I believed their lies about me being the problem, hearing them dismiss me, made something inside me break. For the first time in my life, I saw them clearly. They weren't confused or mistaken. They were selfish. They were cruel. And they had gaslit me for more than a decade. I folded the papers slowly and put them in my bag. My hands were steady now. My voice was quiet but firm. "I'm done letting you use me." Something inside me had snapped, and there was no going back. I went back to the bank the next morning because I needed answers. Real answers, not the twisted excuses my parents had thrown at me. Gregory welcomed me into his office again, and this time there was no confusion in my face. I knew something serious had happened, and I needed to understand exactly what my options were. He explained everything slowly, so I could follow each step. He told me that what happened wasn't just a mistake or a family misunderstanding. It was identity theft, and the law took it very seriously. If I chose to press charges, it could lead to real consequences, even prison time. Hearing that made my chest tighten. I never imagined myself sitting in a bank office, discussing jail time for my own parents. For a moment, I felt like a terrible person just for listening. They were still my parents, even after everything. The idea of turning them in made me feel sick. But when I thought about all the years I had barely survived, all the nights I cried from exhaustion while they lived comfortably using my name, something inside me hardened again. They hadn't cared how their actions hurt me. They hadn't even apologized. They acted like I should thank them. That was when it became clear. They never saw me as their daughter. I was a tool. A name. A source they could use whenever they needed something. I had spent years trying to earn their love, but they had never earned mine. Gregory didn't pressure me. He just handed me the information and told me to think carefully. But deep down, I already knew what I had to do. If I walked away again, they would keep using me, keep destroying whatever future I had left. I couldn't allow that anymore. I walked out of the bank and made a decision. They would never use me again. To protect myself, I needed proof. Real proof. So I went home and began gathering everything I could find. I pulled my old tax records from my files, checked my credit reports, and searched through every document that had my name on it. I even climbed up into my parents' attic later that night, while they were out, to look through old boxes of paperwork. What I found there shocked me more than I expected. There were forms from my high school years with signatures pretending to be mine. Medical papers I had never seen before. Even a credit card application I never filled out. Someone had signed my name again and again, each time taking something from me without my knowledge. Page after page, I saw pieces of a life that wasn't mine, a life built using my identity. The more I uncovered, the more I understood how deep their betrayal went. It wasn't just one mistake. It was years of lies stacked on top of each other. And now I finally had the truth in my hands. I knew I had to speak to Mara alone. She had avoided my eyes the entire time I confronted our parents, and that silence told me she knew more than she wanted to admit. I drove to her apartment the next day with a knot tight in my stomach. I didn't warn her I was coming. I didn't want to give her time to prepare excuses. When she opened the door and saw me, she froze for a second, then forced a smile. "If this is about Mom and Dad, I don't want to get in the middle," she said. Her voice was sweet, but her eyes were nervous. I stepped inside anyway. I didn't waste time. I pulled out one of the statements and placed it on her table. "How long have you known?" I asked. My voice was calm, but my hands felt cold. Mara didn't answer right away. She sat down slowly, like she was deciding what version of the truth she wanted to tell. Finally, she shrugged. "I've always known," she said, like it was nothing. "It wasn't a secret. Mom and Dad did what they had to do. You were too young to help, and I needed stability. You should understand that." My chest tightened. "You knew they used my identity? For 11 years. She didn't blink. "You weren't going to be successful anyway, Harper. You've always struggled. You owed the family something. This helped all of us." Her words felt like a slap. She wasn't ashamed. She wasn't even sorry. She sounded like she truly believed every word she said. Then she added something that made my whole body go cold. "Besides, it wasn't just the mortgage. I used the credit card too. You remember when I was in college? Mom said it was fine. You weren't using it." I felt the room tilt for a moment. That card had damaged my credit so badly I couldn't get approved for anything for years. And she used it without hesitation. "Do you even hear yourself?" I asked. "You stole from me." She rolled her eyes. "Stop acting like a victim, Harper. You always do this. Everything isn't about you." Her voice was dripping with arrogance, the same tone she had used since we were kids, the one that told me she thought she was above me. I had always tried to believe she was just influenced by our parents, but now I saw it clearly. She wasn't innocent. She wasn't confused. She was part of the plan. I slipped my phone into my pocket and pressed record while she continued talking. I didn't interrupt. I didn't react. I just let her speak, let her expose herself with every cruel sentence. She talked about how she deserved more, how our parents had every right to use whatever they needed, how I should just get over it. By the time she finished, my heart felt heavy, but my mind was clear. This wasn't just my parents' betrayal. Mara had helped shape every part of it. And now, I finally had her words recorded, proof that the betrayal ran even deeper than I thought. I took a day to breathe, even though my mind wouldn't stop spinning. I had the bank records, the forged documents, and now Mara's recorded confession. I knew what it all meant, but taking the next step felt heavier than anything I had ever done. Still, I made the appointment with the attorney Gregory recommended. Her name was Evelyn Rourke. When I walked into her office, she stood up to greet me. She had sharp eyes, the kind that missed nothing, and after I handed her the folder of evidence, those eyes widened. She looked through each page carefully, stopping every few minutes to shake her head. Finally, she leaned back in her chair and said, "Harper, this is one of the worst long-term identity theft cases I've seen in years." Hearing that made my stomach twist. It wasn't just bad, it was severe. My own family had done something to me that professionals usually see from strangers or criminals. Evelyn explained everything slowly, so I wouldn't feel overwhelmed. She told me I had several options. I could press criminal charges for identity theft. I could freeze all accounts connected to my name to stop them from using me anymore. I could sue them for the financial damage they caused. I could even force them to refinance the house legally under their own names, which would remove me completely from their mortgage. Every option felt heavy but necessary. My hands shook a little as I listened, not from fear but from the weight of finally understanding how much harm had been done to me. Evelyn didn't pressure me, but she made one thing clear. If I did nothing, they could keep destroying my credit, my stability, and my life. I took a deep breath and told her I wanted to move forward. She nodded, already preparing the forms. When she slid the papers toward me to sign, I hesitated for a moment. My mom's face flashed in my head. My dad's voice echoed, calling me ungrateful. Mara's cold expression played in my mind. A part of me still felt guilty. Guilty for being the one to finally stop them. Guilty for choosing myself over the family that never chose me. But another part of me felt something new. Strength. For the first time, I wasn't letting them decide my life. I signed my name on every page. With each signature, the guilt loosened its grip, and something steadier took its place. I wasn't just protecting myself. I was reclaiming everything they stole. When we were done, Evelyn looked at me seriously. The moment these subpoenas go out, your family is going to react. They won't take this quietly. Be ready. I nodded. I already knew they would fight back. They always had a way of turning everything around to make me the problem. But now I had the law on my side. I had the truth. And for the first time in my life, I felt prepared for whatever came next. Clara showed up at my apartment door without warning. The moment I opened it, she pushed her way inside, yelling before I could even speak. She kept saying I was ruining everything, that I was breaking the family apart. She cried loudly, almost dramatically, as if she was the victim. I stood there listening, feeling a mix of sadness and disbelief. For years I had stayed quiet, but now she wanted to blame me for finally defending myself. While she shouted in my living room, my phone kept buzzing. Roy sent message after message, threatening me and telling me I had gone too far. He acted like I had attacked them first, even though they were the ones who built their comfort on my stolen identity. I didn't reply. I couldn't. Every word from them felt like another strike. Then Mara called. Unlike our parents, she wasn't angry. She tried to sound calm, almost gentle. She talked about how hard things were at home, and how I should think about the bigger picture. She said if I didn't stop, our parents could lose the house. She tried to guilt-trip me, reminding me of moments from our childhood, pretending we were close. But I had heard enough lies from her to last a lifetime. I finally told her the truth. My voice didn't shake, and for once, I didn't feel small. I said, "You lost the house the day you stole my life." There was silence on the line. She had no answer because deep down she knew it was true. After that, I blocked all of them, the calls, the messages, everything. My apartment felt quiet again, but not empty. It felt like peace. It felt like I was protecting myself for the first time. A few days later, investigators finished reviewing the documents I had turned in. They confirmed what I already suspected. The identity theft had been happening for years, longer than I even realized. Every strange bill, every denied loan, every financial roadblock I faced, it all connected back to them. The bank moved quickly. They froze the mortgage account under my name, which meant my parents could no longer make payments using my identity. They had to face the truth on paper now, not just in arguments. Their world, the one built on my stolen credit and my stolen opportunities, was finally cracking. I didn't celebrate. I didn't smile. I just breathed, knowing the fallout had begun, and for once it wasn't falling on me. People in my parents' neighborhood started talking. Word spread fast after law enforcement showed up at their house. Their friends and neighbors began asking them what was going on, why officers were stopping by, and why documents were being carried out. Clara and Roy had always tried to present themselves as the perfect family, the couple who did everything right. Now cracks were showing everywhere, and they couldn't hide them anymore. Mara faced her own fallout. Her fiancé called her after hearing about the investigation. He had seen her name tied to fraud records and asked her directly what she had done. Instead of admitting anything, she tried to blame me. But he wasn't fooled. A day later, he returned the ring and ended the engagement. Mara had always been proud, always convinced she was better than me. Losing him shook her more than she would ever admit. Clara didn't give up, though. She reached out to extended relatives, cousins, aunts, anyone she thought could pressure me. Suddenly, I was receiving messages from people I barely spoke to, all repeating the same line. Family is important. You should fix this before it gets worse. It was painful to hear them take her side, but this time, I did not bend. I stayed calm and polite but firm. I wasn't going to carry their mistakes anymore. Soon after, I received an official notice from the bank and the credit bureaus. My accounts were being restored, and the fraudulent activity was being removed from my record. Seeing that letter felt like someone lifted a heavy weight from my shoulders. For the first time in years, I felt like my life belonged to me again. Evelyn, my attorney, explained the next steps. She told me I would receive restitution, and it would be significant. My parents would have to repay what they took, and the law would make sure of it. Her voice was steady and confident, and it helped me stay strong even when emotions tried to pull me down. Now all that was left was the final meeting. The one where everything would be put on the table, every truth spoken, every lie exposed. I knew it wouldn't be easy. There would be yelling, crying, blaming, maybe even begging. But I also knew I wasn't the same person they once controlled. I was ready. When I walked into the mediation room, my hands were shaking a little, but my mind felt clear. Clara and Roy were already seated, acting quiet and humble, like they were the victims in all of this. The moment the mediator asked them to speak, they tried to pretend they were sorry. But it didn't take long before they slipped back into their old habits. Clara said I must have misunderstood the situation. Roy tried to insist I was overreacting. They blamed stress, money problems, even my poor memory. I didn't respond to any of it. I simply opened my folder and placed everything on the table: bank statements, forged signatures, old documents, and the recording of Mara admitting everything. The room went silent as the mediator reviewed each piece. There was no way to deny it anymore. 10 years of lies were right there in black and white. The mediator turned to me and said the evidence was solid. Then he explained the terms. My parents would be put on a repayment plan, the mortgage would be removed from my name completely, and I would no longer be tied to any of their financial responsibilities. Watching Clara's face fall was strangely quiet. No screaming, no excuses, just shock. Mara, however, exploded. She stood up and threw a stream of insults at me, calling me dramatic, selfish, heartless. She said I ruined everything. Her voice grew louder and shakier, like she couldn't believe her world was collapsing in front of strangers. Clara and Roy didn't even move to stop her. They just sat there, staring at the table. I waited until she finished. Then I looked at all three of them and spoke slowly, without anger. You didn't just steal my credit. You stole my future. Now I'm taking it back. Nobody said anything after that. The mediator finalized the documents and handed copies to each of us. My parents' signatures looked forced, almost shaky. Mara didn't sign anything. She had no legal power here. But she glared at me like she wanted to rip the papers in half. When it was over, I stood up, thanked the mediator, and walked out. The hallway felt brighter, lighter, like a door that had been locked for years finally opened. I wasn't tied to them anymore. Not their debt, not their choices, not their chaos. For the first time in my life, I walked out completely free. I carried the last box into my new apartment and felt something I hadn't felt in years: quiet. Real, peaceful quiet. No guilt hanging over me. No fear of another call about a debt I didn't create. No constant pressure from people who saw me as a tool instead of a daughter. My name was finally clean. My future finally belonged to me. The first thing I did was open a savings account. It felt strange at first, putting money aside for myself instead of watching it disappear into problems I didn't cause. I sat there in the small office, filling out the forms, and realized how many years I had lost to something I never chose. For the first time, I could plan a life that wasn't about surviving chaos. It was about building something new. I didn't try to reconnect with my family. Every time I thought about calling them, the memories came back. The lies, the blame, the way they twisted everything to make me feel like the problem. I wasn't angry anymore, just done. Peace meant stepping away, not chasing people who broke me. I spent a lot of evenings sitting by the window, thinking about everything that had happened. Betrayal had shaped so much of my life. It had made me strong, careful, independent. But revenge, real legal justice, finally gave me freedom. It didn't erase what they did, but it gave me a chance to start again without their shadows following me. A few weeks later, I went back to the bank to close out the last piece of paperwork connected to the case. Gregory met me in his office, the same place where my life had flipped upside down. He looked through the final documents, stamped a page, and then smiled. "It's over," he said. "You're clean. Completely." For a moment, I didn't move. I let the words sink in. After everything, after the shock, the anger, the heartbreak, the fight, I was finally free. I walked outside and the sun hit my face. The air felt different, lighter, almost new. I didn't know exactly what my future would look like, but for once, it didn't scare me. It felt open. I took a deep breath and kept walking, leaving the past behind me. Justice had caught up, and now I could finally move forward. Do you think Harper made the right choice by walking away from her toxic family, or should she have given them another chance? Tell me your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe.